Yo. I get it cracking like a bad bag. Bitch talking, she's the queen. Well, she looking like a lab rat. I'm Angelina, you Jennifer. Come on, bitch, you see where your bread at. Ice my wrist and I piss some bitches. You can suck my Disney if it takes it's just you don't like them disses. Give my ass some kisses so they know what this is. Given this is the business. So pull up and I'm starting, but I ain't a stopping. Yes, I'm rocking Jordans, but I ain't a jump man. Bitches play the bit cause they know I'm a front man. Put me on the door like cause that who they trusted. I your SB, what the fuck's good? We ship platinum, them bitches are shipping wood. Them nappy had a house, but my kitchen good. I wish, bitch, I would. You're a stupid hoe, you're a stupid hoe. You're a stupid hoe, you're a stupid hoe. You're a stupid hoe, you're a stupid hoe. You're a stupid hoe, yeah, you're a stupid hoe. Stupid hoes is my enemy. Stupid.
All right, well, I know that some of you might not like that, but Schadenfreude is the order of the day. And yes, Kamala Harris has dropped out of the presidential race. It is official, and she is gone. This video is a cover of Nicki Minaj, so please don't copyright me. But here we go. Kamala Harris drops out of the presidential race. It should say Karma Harris. Okay. It says Kamala Harris dropped her presidential campaign on Tuesday after months of failing to lift her candidacy from the bottom of the field. Well, she can't get off the bottom of the field because she's always on her back. Sorry, I have to slut shame because it's her, because she's a moron. A premature ending for a California senator once heralded as a top-tier contender for the nomination. Harris told aides of her intentions in an all-staff call. A person familiar with the call said she sounded distraught. While Harris had filed for the December debate in her home state, she was running dangerously low on cash, lacking the resources to air TV ads in Iowa, and her staff was gripped by long-running internal turmoil. Still, the news came as a shock to some of her biggest supporters. Just as Harris was announcing the news internally, the Super PAC had cleared more than $1 million in TV ads in Iowa to boost her struggling campaign. So I'm wondering if those checks are returnable. The ad, which she argued she was the best equipped candidate to take on Trump, was canceled. 11 months ago, at the launch of our campaign in Oakland, I told you all I am not perfect, but I will always speak with decency and moral clarity and treat all people with dignity and respect. I will lead with integrity. I will speak the truth, and that's what I have tried to do every day of this campaign. So here's the truth today. Harris wrote in a note to supporters, I've taken stock and looked at this from every angle, and over the last few days have come to one of the hardest decisions of my life. My campaign for president simply doesn't have the financial resources we need to continue. Harris, who spent Thanksgiving in Iowa with family, took a deep look at the campaign's resources over the holiday and decided she did not have a path to the nomination. A Harris campaign aide said the expected impeachment trial in January further complicated the situation. So this whole impeachment thing has literally, even if Donald Trump does not get impeached, the end result of the Trump impeachment process is that Kamala Harris will not be president. So thank you, Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi, for sparing us the risk of having this idiot run the country. She made the decision Monday after discussions with her family and senior aides. Harris will travel to the early states this week to thank staff and supporters for their dedication to the campaign. So then she has a tweet and whatever. Twitter is just melting down here. Ana Navarro, a.k.a. Miss Piggy or Senora Cerda, I guess I would call her. Dear Kamala Harris, I thank you for using your voice to inspire many, especially little girls of color who now don't need to ask if someone like them can grow up to run for president. Well, I think that it's proven if there's a position that, girls of color need someone who can prove you can run for president, I don't think that Kamala Harris would be a good person to be your standard bearer. She's not exactly the Muhammad Ali of presidential campaigns, seeing as Muhammad Ali was able to win championship belts, and she basically has loosened a lot of men's belts. Thought you could use a puppy picture with my cha-cha if you need a hug today. We got you. Yeah, sure. So you have other people that are, Brigitte Gabriel. I like Brigitte Gabriel, but she's kind of partisan right wing. But she says, what a complete joke of a campaign. I guess she will now be running for the vice presidency. I'm not the biggest fan. This is Dennis James. I'm not the biggest fan of Kamala Harris, but her dropping out of the presidential race before someone like Tulsi Gabbard, Tom Steyer, or Michael Bloomberg kind of makes me mad. Well, you might want to check reality, bro, because in the end, these things are determined by money. And even Peter Dow, who's gone full Bernie now, is saying love is a beautiful thing because her husband is comforting her, and then a lot of people are throwing shade. It is so funny. Zerlina Maxwell, thank you, Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is just a joke of a person. I'm not a billionaire. Kamala Harris cites fundraising as she drops out of 2020 race. Well, you were going to have to drop out anyway. Nobody wanted you. While everyone is tweeting obits for the Kamala Harris campaign, I'll say she wasn't my top pick, but I do think it would be great to see her in the debates. With her prosecutorial acumen, she would have picked Trump apart like a vivisectionist. No, she's never been a good debater because Kamala Harris is simply a person who is, she is, I guess, only good on offense. She's very, very, very poor on defense. And that's why when you talk about what happened with her, so we'll go over like some of the reasons that she dropped out. I am going to do a little bit about why all of the people who have dropped out, what was their big drawback. It's not going to be hard for many of them. So we're going to go through all of them. Richard Ojeda, the real problem with him is that outside of West Virginia, where he was not really well known anyway, he pretty much was just this curiosity, and only progressives really were interested in him. Eric Swalwell was just a flat piece of cardboard. Go big, be bold. Wasn't that his slogan? Does that sound more convincing from him or from me? Because it didn't sound convincing from him. Mike Gravel, 90 years old. What's he gonna do? Joined pretty late too. Well, he would be 90 years old when he would take office. So he really never wanted to be president. He was just running in order to, I guess, change the debate. John Hickenlooper, yeah, there was the whole part where he admitted to going to a porno with his mom back in the days when you would actually go to a theater to watch a porno. Jay Inslee, can someone say climate hysteria? Climate hysteria? The world is on fire. Yeah, that's a great positive message for a campaign. Seth Moulton, nobody knows. That's another guy. There's people who ran and nobody ever noticed, and then they dropped out. So, Seth Moulton's gone. Kirsten Gillibrand. Women. That was her whole campaign. Me too. It's my turn. I'm Hillary's mini-me. That was Kirsten Gillibrand. Bill de Blasio, how's neglecting your actual job in order to get a more responsible job? How does that sound for you? By the way, that's one of the reasons, maybe it's a bad career move. Whenever I've had a job, I've never gone actively looking for a new job. So, yeah, Bill de Blasio, complete joke of a candidate. Tim Ryan, his problem was that he always, for one thing, he was trying to say, oh, Joe Biden is way too old and I believe in all the same things, so why don't you just vote for me? The problem is that nobody cares what Tim Ryan has to say. So he released an album, I think it was an album on Spotify, of just him talking about a couple things, a couple issues, and nobody really cared. So, yeah, he's done, and I'm glad to see him going back to work doing nothing for the people of Youngstown down here in Ohio. Beto, How's Boogaloo bait going? A lot of people really, really, really wanted him to keep baiting the gun lobby, so much so that none of those people actually wanted to contribute to his campaign or vote for him. Wayne Messam, God knows, Joe Sestak, nobody ever heard of him. Steve Bullock, he just basically ran saying, "I'm from Montana. Montana is a red state, and I won Montana as a Democrat. Whatever. That's my entire platform. I can win a red state as a Democrat." So yeah, he's done. And of course, Kamala Harris, who is also completely done. And we're going to look at some polling, which is something she really likes doing. So the polls really got to her. They impaled her, you could say. She went from a high. So she started her campaign back last year. She was at 6.3, and she started to track up. Around her announcement, she was at 12.3%, which is good in a national polling. But 2 years out from a race, national polling is worthless. So then she just starts to, wallow and trail off, especially once Bernie is really in the race, because nobody really wants to see Kamala Harris. And then there was the first debate, which was in June, where she spiked up and actually was above Bernie for a very brief time, which shows you how useless polling is, because I don't for a moment believe that the people who started donating and volunteering for Bernie Sanders because of one debate, I don't believe that they said, "Oh, I guess Kamala Harris is better," right? I think that most people who are, and I hate Bernie Sanders personally, so don't call me a Bernie bro. I think most people who want to vote for Bernie Sanders genuinely like Bernie Sanders, and I give him credit for sticking with it. Right? But the fact is, let me just silence this tab here. She really, her entire strength was that one debate. And other than that, she's just been a wet blanket the entire time. And I don't think that she's going to really, she's not going to be able to seek higher office again, because people will just remember this time. Who's going to donate to this campaign next time if they see the results that they got? You can also see, by the way, Elizabeth Warren briefly rose to first place, and people are talking about how her campaign is really just trailing off. For some reason, I don't know why Bernie Sanders' campaign is also losing steam. I don't really see, and to be honest with you, polling numbers, they're supposed to be inflection points due to things that have happened. So I don't see why people are losing confidence in Bernie Sanders. This isn't like after his heart attack, which I think was around maybe like early October. So I don't understand why people are losing confidence in him. But in any case, after that second debate, it sort of went the other way for Kamala Harris, and she's now at less support. She's at 3.4%, which is the lowest level of support she's had since she started running. Now, I've said a lot of times, the only reason that presidential polling on the national level even matters is sometimes it gives an idea of who donors should put their money behind. Other than that, it doesn't really say who you should vote for, who's going to really win, right? National polling is meaningless because once the actual primaries get underway, the momentum starts to carry from state to state. Usually, it's very difficult if you have a very slow beginning, like in Iowa, and you get a very low polling placement at the actual caucus. It's very, very I guess Kamala's going to have to miss out on a lot of caucuses now. I know how she really likes to ride those caucuses. So, Iowa Democratic caucuses, she had also, this only goes from April. Her high point was, again, back in July. And then she's sunk all the way down to 3.3%, which is still a little higher than Tulsi Gabbard, her nemesis, but it's not tangibly higher. So her fans, I believe, will probably flow over to either Buttigieg or maybe even Biden. It doesn't matter at this point. I think Cory Booker is going to go down soon, which, like Kamala Harris, I've heard he has a certain affinity for going down on things. New Hampshire, You have Kamala Harris has sunk to new lows, bent over and taken it. So she was again in July at 13%. Now she is at basically 2.7% lower than Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard has 5% in New Hampshire, meaning that if the vote were to be held today in New Hampshire, it's likely that Peter Buttigieg would do very well. I don't know if he would win. I still think it's possible that Bernie Sanders could win. And I don't really trust these polling agencies very closely, but she's not, I don't think that Sanders is as weak as some of the polls say he is, but I still wouldn't go so far as to say he's in the lead. But I think he's going to surpass expectations in some of these states. I think he's going to do pretty well in Iowa. I think he's going to do decently well in New Hampshire. That's me being honest. This is someone who's never liked him, who thinks he's a horrible piece of shit. But I think that there's a lot of people that'll still vote for Bernie Sanders because they like him. But yeah, you have she's polling in New Hampshire at the moment lower than Andrew Yang, lower than Tulsi Gabbard, lower than Tom Steyer, lower than Amy Klobuchar in New Hampshire. Let's see where she is in Iowa as of right now. She is lower than Klobuchar there too. So in those two early states, Harris would be earning less delegates if you even get delegates for such low numbers than Amy Klobuchar. So yeah, I think it's suffice it to say that she's completely done. She has 6.3% in South Carolina, which would put her at 5th place in South Carolina, which was supposed to be her strong state. And she's been dropping all throughout the past 2 months in South Carolina. So she's effectively just facing reality. Now let's speak a little bit in the remaining time. I think we'll try to do an even 20 minutes or so. Why did Kamala Harris not do well? The first problem with Kamala Harris, Horace, is that she is not going to attract many people who were supporters of, the Trump campaign who you could be able to sway. And the reason is that she was this vindictive harpy during the Kavanaugh hearings. And she just comes across as a very, malicious person. And some people who are on the left, they look at it as strength. They look at it as, she's a gutsy woman or whatever. That's not really, those aren't qualities that a lot like Republican women really treasure. They don't want a woman who's going, they almost look at somebody like that as kind of a threat, as someone who would be, I guess, like you ever see girls in high school who fight each other over locker space and stuff like that, or over who wore which dress first, stupid arguments like that. That's the way that a lot of the women that I've met look at Kamala Harris. A lot of women, by the way, and you might think it's sexist of me just to do all these retarded puns about her being loose and kind of, a whore, but a lot of women don't respect you if you give oral sex to your boss, Willie Brown, the mayor of San Francisco, in order to get ahead. Because a lot of women want to prosper in their careers without having to give, the verbal assent to their superior. It's that there are a lot of women. This is what I think is really ridiculous. A lot of women want there to be a merit-based system where they can get ahead, and so people and not have to give head, and that's why Kamala Harris is not very popular among a lot of women. Obviously, there's plenty of women who do like her, but that doesn't really offset that fact. Another reason that she was hated was the whole ADOS episode, which are American descendants of slavery. So those are black people who live here in the U.S. whose parents or rather their ancestors lived through slavery in the United States. They hated Kamala Harris with such a passion that they put me to shame. I basically do this a lot as a joke. I hate her, granted, but they took her candidacy as an insult to them. because she was trying to pass herself off as more black, and she was also, so we're going to go over 20, but so be it. They hated Kamala Harris so bad because she was always doing things like going on the Breakfast Club and pretending that she listened to Snoop and Tupac when they didn't even release an album before, like at the time when she was in college. And she was talking about how she used to smoke pot, even though later she ended up prosecuting people for smoking pot. And the whole Kamala is a cop thing, that was a huge, huge thing. And credit to them. I mean, they didn't give up on their principles like they did in the past with Barack Obama, letting him get away with a lot of stuff that they think is important. So yeah, she's toast as far as that. And then of course during the actual primary or the debate sessions, every time she would try to climb over the corpse of someone else. So she went after Joe Biden in the first debate and tried to pass him off as this disgusting racist or something, when in reality, Joe Biden in the 70s said things that are actually very common sense about busing. He said, children shouldn't be bused across town just in order to integrate schools because the Department of Education said so. So Tulsi Gabbard came to her defense, and then of course Tulsi Gabbard really went deep and speared her. She went on Clay Travis's show and just demolished Kamala Harris on her prosecutorial record and on her record as far as foreign policy. And then in the actual campaign, in the actual debate, that was the great moment. And I guess we'll pull it up. So this will be the greatest hits of Tulsi Gabbard and Kamala Harris.
Senator Harris, you have also been quite critical of Vice President Biden's policies on race, specifically on the issue of busing in the 1970s, having benefited from busing when you were a young child. Vice President Biden says that your current position on busing, you're opposed to federally mandated busing, that position is the same as his position. Is he right?
That is simply false. And let's be very clear about this. When Vice President Biden was in the United States Senate working with segregationists to oppose busing, which was the vehicle by which we would integrate America's public schools, had I been in the United States Senate at that time, I would have been completely on the other side of the aisle. And let's be clear about this. Had those segregationists their way, I would not be a member of the United States Senate, Cory Booker would not be a member of the United States Senate, and Barack Obama would not have been in a position to nominate him to the title he now holds. And so on that issue, we could not be more apart, which is that the Vice President has still failed to acknowledge that it was wrong to take the position that he took at that time. Now, I would like to also talk about this conversation about Eric Garner, because I too met with his mother. And one of the things that we've got to be clear about is that this President of the United States, Donald Trump, while he has been in office, has quietly been allowing the United States Department of Justice to shut down consent decrees, to stop pattern and practice investigations. On that case, we also know that the Civil Rights Division, this is important, the Civil Rights Division of the United States Department of Justice said charges should have been filed, but this United States Department of Justice usurped, and I believe it is because that president did not want those charges to go forward, and they overrode a decision by the Civil Rights Division of the United States Department of Justice. Under my administration, the Civil Rights Division will reign, and there will be independent investigations.
Vice President Biden, I want to give you a chance to respond to what Senator Harris just said.
When Senator Harris was the Attorney General for 8 years in the state of California, there were two of the most segregated school districts in the country, in Los Angeles and in San Francisco. And she did not, I didn't see a single solitary time she brought a case against them to desegregate them. Secondly, she also was in a situation where she had a police department when she was there that in fact was abusing people's rights. And the fact was that she in fact was told by her own people that her own.
So this was basically, this entire setup was just to bait Joe Biden into getting clobbered by Kamala Harris. And it's pretty interesting that Kamala Harris didn't expect anyone else to attack her.
Own staff that she should do something about and disclose to defense attorneys like me that you, in fact, have been, the police officer did something that did not give you information that would exculpate your client. She didn't do that. She never did it. And so what happened? Along came a federal judge and said,
So I actually support what Joe Biden is saying here, and I think as much as I don't like Joe Biden, it's a fair point. Defense attorneys are at a disadvantage because all of the evidence is in the hand of the prosecutor. Therefore, if the prosecutor withholds exculpatory evidence against a defendant, it could actually put innocent people in prison, which is an abuse of the system. That's why prosecution and defense are not exactly co-equal branches of the judicial process.
enough, and he freed 1,000 of these people. If you doubt me, Google 1,000 prisoners freed, Kamala Harris.
Thank you, Vice President Biden. Senator Harris, your response?
This is simply not true. And as Attorney General of California, where I ran the second largest Department of Justice in the United States, second only to the United States Department of Justice, I am proud of the work we did, work that has received national recognition for what has been the important work of reforming a criminal justice system and cleaning up the consequences of the bills that you passed when you were in the United States Senate for decades. It was the work of creating one of the first in the nation initiatives around re-entering former offenders and getting them jobs and counseling.
Thank you, Senator.
I did the work as Attorney General of putting body cameras on special agents in the state of California, and I'm proud of that work.
I want to bring in Congresswoman Gabbard. Congresswoman Gabbard, you took issue with Senator Harris confronting Vice President Biden at the last debate. You called it a, quote, false accusation that Joe Biden is a racist. What's your response?
I want to bring the conversation back to the broken criminal justice system that is disproportionately negatively impacting Black and brown people all across this country today. Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a
This is the moment. This is the moment that ended the Kamala Harris campaign, as far as I'm concerned.
prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence.
See this slow shaking of the head like she's pissed off. That's what did it. Now, a lot of people were complaining, oh, Tulsi Gabbard's reading from crib notes. Damn straight you're going to read from crib notes. Look at Joe trying to, remember where to cite things. Kamala Harris, now, all she can do is shake her head because Tulsi Gabbard is reading from the crib notes. It's great to have crib notes. It's the best thing ever. I use crib notes all the time when I'm debating retards.
That would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place. That impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Senator Harris, your response?
As the elected Attorney General of California, I did the work of significantly reforming the criminal justice system of a state of 40 million people, which became a national model for the work that needs to be done. And I am proud of that work. And I am proud of making a decision to not just give fancy speeches or be...
So she points at her without actually looking at her. Kamala Harris never actually looked at Tulsi Gabbard during this debate.
In a legislative body and give speeches on the floor, but actually doing the work of being in the position to use the power that I had to reform a system that is badly in need of reform. That is why we created initiatives that were about re-entering former offenders and getting them counseling. It is why, and because I know that criminal justice system is so broken, that I am an advocate for what we need to do to not only decriminalize, but legalize marijuana in the United States.
I want to bring Congresswoman Gabbard back in. Your response,
The bottom line is, Senator Harris, when you were in a position to make a difference and an impact in these people's lives, you did not. And worse yet, in the case of those who were on death row, innocent people, you actually blocked evidence from being revealed that would have freed them until you were forced to do so. There is no excuse for that.
And you could just see her face twisting in pain from the truth actually being told about her.
And the people who suffered under your reign as prosecutor, you owe them an apology.
Senator Harris.
My entire career, I have been personally opposed to the death penalty, and that has never changed. And I dare anybody who is in a position to make that decision, to face the people I have faced to say I will not seek the death penalty. That is my background. That is my work. I am proud of it. I think you can judge people by when they are under fire, and it's not about some fancy opinion on a stage, but when they're in the position to actually make a decision, what do they do? When I was in the position of having to decide whether or not to seek a death penalty on cases I prosecuted, I made a very difficult decision that was not popular to not seek the death penalty. History shows that, and I am proud of those decisions.
Senator Harris, thank you very much. Senator Bennett, a question for you.
All right, this part isn't important, but you get the point. Now, I know that there's been a lot of basically people giving head to Tulsi Gabbard too, when in reality there's a lot of policies I don't really like of hers. I hate her gun policy. I hate her policies on taxation, and I don't really like her policies as far as abortion, although she's a little bit more reasonable than some people. But America owes a debt of gratitude to Tulsi Gabbard for slaughtering. So a couple things slaughtered the Kamala Harris campaign. The first thing was the ADOS issue. That was huge in terms of denying her a lot of support in the black community. So she was done from that standpoint. Then there was this, which was amazingly damaging to her image. And you can actually see in every single polling trend, whether it was the national polling, whether it was the polling in New Hampshire. Okay, her high point was around the time of this debate and before it, and then afterward it just started to crater. You can see it in Iowa as well. The hell? Here. So you can see in every single case that debate performance, it shows she went from 16 points to now over in Iowa she's at 3.3%. So yeah, I would say that Tulsi Gabbard destroyed the Kamala Harris campaign. It's over. And then the last thing was the whole impeachment inquiry, which now poses a threat to a number of Senate campaigns, senators who are campaigning. If you look at the tier of candidates who are running, you have Bernie Sanders as a senator. You have Elizabeth Warren as a senator. Amy Klobuchar, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker. All of those people are senators. They would have to suspend their campaigns in order to go back and deal with impeachment. Tulsi Gabbard wouldn't have had to do that because she's not on either of the committees that's dealing with impeachment, so she would just have to be present for the impeachment vote, which I would hope she would vote against, but I don't think she's very reliable in that respect. But that's about it. It's over. Kamala Harris is toast. And once again, I guess we'll part with this nice rendition of her career.
Yo. I get it cracking like a bad bag. Bitch stucky, she's the queen. Well, she looking like a lab rat. I'm Angelina, you Jennifer. Come on, bitch, you see where your bread at. Ice my wristers and I piss some bitches. If you suck my Disney, if it takes it's just if you don't like them disses. Give my ass some kisses, so they know what this is. Given this is the business. So pull up and I'm starting, but I ain't a stop man. Yes, I'm rocking Jordans, but I ain't a jump man. Bitches play the bit cause they know I'm a front man. Put me on the door like cause that who they trusted. I your SB, what the fuck's good? We ship platinum, them bitches are shipping wood. Them nappy had a house, but my kitchen good. I wish, bitch, I would. You're a stupid hoe, you're a stupid hoe. You're a stupid hoe, you're a stupid hoe. You're a stupid hoe, you're a stupid hoe. You're a stupid hoe, yeah, you're a stupid hoe. Stupid hoes is my enemy. Stupid hoes is so whack.